My name is Robert Hayes, 72 years old, retired construction foreman, and apparently a burden to my only son, David. Funny, isn't it? You spend your whole life breaking your back so your kid never has to, and one day you wake up and realize you've just become an inconvenience in his schedule. I wasn't always alone. I used to be the man people called when something needed fixing, a roof, a foundation, even a broken spirit or two. My late wife, Margaret, and I built everything from scratch. The house, the business, the savings, even the damn flower garden she loved so much. When she passed 5 years ago, the house got quieter. David stopped visiting as much. Calls became texts. Texts became nothing. I told myself he was busy. That's what sons do when they have families of their own. But deep down, I knew. The man I'd raised, the boy who used to run into my arms after school, had turned into someone else. Someone colder. Still, I kept helping him. Paid off his debts when his business failed. Let him move into my guest house when his marriage crumbled. Even signed the loan papers he said were for a short-term investment. That's what fathers do, they believe. I didn't realize what I'd signed away until the bank letters came. My house, our house, was no longer mine. My savings had been transferred. Everything Margaret and I had worked for, gone. I called David, shaking. "Son, there's a mistake on this paperwork," I said. There was a pause, then his voice, calm, rehearsed. "Dad, you agreed to it. You said you wanted to help me. It's just business, just business." Those words hit harder than any punch I'd ever taken. I could feel Margaret's photo staring at me from the mantel. My throat went dry. "David, you took everything." He sighed like I was wasting his time. "Dad, you'll be fine. I found a nice place for you to stay. You'll have people to take care of you." That night he came over with a fake smile and papers for me to sign. The next morning I was in the passenger seat of his car, clutching a small suitcase. I looked out the window as my house, my whole life, disappeared behind me. The road stretched long and quiet. When we finally pulled into the nursing home, it looked decent enough from the outside. Old brick building, green lawn, clean windows. "This is temporary," David said, helping me out of the car. "You'll love it here, Dad." He didn't look me in the eye when he left. As the door shut behind him, I caught my reflection in the glass. Gray hair, tired eyes, hands that had built everything now empty. I whispered to myself, "Margaret, if you could see this. But here's the thing about me. I may be old, but I'm not finished. Not yet. He thinks he's dumped me in some cheap home, a place to forget me. What he doesn't know is, I built this place years ago, and he just handed me the perfect chance to teach him what family really means." The first night in the home was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ribs and makes you think of everything you've lost. I sat on the edge of the narrow bed, staring at the sterile walls and wondering how my own son had turned me into a guest in my own life. But as I looked around, something stirred in the back of my mind, a memory. This place, it looked familiar. The layout, the paint, even the smell of disinfectant and lemon polish. It wasn't some random nursing home. I'd overseen its construction 15 years ago when a friend of mine, good old Frank Lawson, wanted to invest in elder care facilities. Back then, I was the project manager. Every blueprint, every nail, every window, I'd signed off on it. And when Frank passed away 5 years later, he left a chunk of ownership shares to me as a thank you, shares I'd never sold. So while my son thought he was dumping me in a home, what he'd actually done was drive me straight into one of my own properties. He didn't even check the paperwork, probably too busy dreaming about my savings. The next morning, I met the head nurse, Clara. She had sharp eyes, the kind that see more than you say. "Mr. Hayes, we don't get many new residents dropped off without notice," she said, glancing at her clipboard. I gave her a small smile. "Let's just say it was my son's idea of a surprise gift." Her eyebrow lifted slightly. "And how are you feeling about that?" "Like it's time to surprise him back," I said quietly. For the next few days I kept to myself, observing. David didn't call, not once, not to check on me, not to see if I'd settled in. I wasn't surprised. I knew his type too well. I'd seen that same greed in men I used to work with, the kind who'd steal the bricks off a site if they thought they could get away with it. But I wasn't going to just sit here and rot. I had the deed copies and legal paperwork buried deep in my safe deposit box downtown. I still had contacts, lawyers, accountants, even an old business partner who owed me a favor or two. When Clara stopped by later that week, I told her everything, who I was, who really owned the place, and what my son had done. For a moment she just stared at me, then let out a low whistle. You mean to tell me this is your facility? 1/3 mine, I corrected, a smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. And I think it's time I paid a visit to the manager's office. By the next morning, I was sitting in front of Gerald, the facility's general manager and a man I'd hired myself over a decade ago. His eyes went wide when he saw me. Mr. Hayes, I thought you'd retired out in Arizona. I did, I said, leaning back, but life has a funny way of dragging you back in. Tell me, Gerald, how's the paperwork looking on this place these days? He chuckled nervously. Steady as always, sir. Why do you ask? I handed him a file, the original ownership certificate Frank had given me. His eyes widened. Sir, this is still valid. Good, I said, because we're about to have a new resident and I want him treated very personally. Gerald frowned. You mean your son? I nodded slowly. Exactly. But not yet. Let him think he's won for a little while longer. I want to see what kind of man he is when he thinks no one's watching. Over the next 2 weeks, I got regular updates from Clara about how the staff were doing, what improvements the home needed, and how residents were treated. I was quietly assessing things, preparing documents, setting traps, all while David continued to live in my house, spending my money, driving my car. Then, one afternoon, Clara came in, holding her phone. Mr. Hayes, she said with a smirk, you might want to see this. It was a social media post. David posing in front of my old pickup truck, the caption reading, finally got rid of the old man, time to enjoy the good life. My blood boiled, but I didn't explode. No, anger clouds judgment. Instead, I saved the post, emailed it to my lawyer, and said, let's start the transfer process quietly. By the end of that week, Gerald and Clara had updated all staff privately. Mr. Hayes wasn't just another resident. He was the majority owner of the entire facility. They addressed me as Sir behind closed doors, and I instructed them to keep everything normal. David still believed I was broke and powerless. But power, I've learned, doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just waits patiently, smiling, while the guilty dig their own graves. And my son? He was already halfway in. I knew he'd come soon. The money would run out, the debts would pile up, and when that happened, he'd come crawling back. The funny thing? I was ready. The next phase of the plan was simple. Let him see what it feels like to lose control, just like he did to me. And when the day came when he walked through those same double doors thinking he was in charge again, he'd realize too late whose home it really was. I didn't have to wait long. 3 weeks later, I saw his name flash across the facility's guest sign-in sheet. David Hayes, my son. The same son who couldn't be bothered to check if I was eating or breathing. The same man who forged my signature to drain my savings. Now he was here, broke, desperate, and suddenly remembering he had a father. I was in the garden when he arrived, pacing near the roses like he was allergic to humility. His designer jacket looked a little tighter, his shoes scuffed. Good. Reality was starting to bite. When our eyes met, he plastered on that fake grin I'd seen 1,000 times growing up. Dad, there you are. I've been trying to reach you. I raised an eyebrow. That's so? You forgot where you dropped me off? He chuckled awkwardly, glancing around at the staff who were politely pretending not to eavesdrop. Come on, Dad, don't be like that. I've had a rough few weeks. Business took a hit, you know. I could use your help sorting a few things out. I smiled slightly. Sure. Let's go to my office. He blinked. Your what? Follow me, I said, walking through the hallway with the ease of someone who belonged there. The nurses nodded respectfully as I passed. Clara even gave me a knowing smile. David looked more confused with every step. When we entered the administrative wing, he froze. I opened the door to a neatly kept office with my nameplate. Arthur Hayes, co-founder and director. His mouth opened, then closed again like a fish gasping for air. Surprised? I asked casually, settling behind the desk. You really should have paid more attention to the contracts before you had me sign anything. I may have handed over my personal assets, son, but the holdings under this facility were never listed under my name. Different trust, different terms. His face paled. Wait, you mean this place is mine? I said, leaning forward. You dropped me in my own nursing home, David. He tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. Dad, I didn't know. I thought, oh, I know exactly what you thought, I cut in. You thought I was too old, too slow to notice. You thought you'd get the house, the accounts, the cars, and I'd fade quietly into the background. But you see, I didn't build my life by being naive. I built it by being prepared. He sat down heavily, rubbing his temples. I got into trouble, Dad. You don't understand. The business fell apart, and I needed cash fast. I didn't mean to throw your father away? I asked, voice cold but steady. You packed me up like unwanted furniture, David. You made sure the neighbors didn't see, told everyone I was sick and needed care. You didn't even look back when you drove away. He stared at the floor, silent. I took a deep breath. I told myself I'd forgive you once, just once. But then I saw your post. Finally got rid of the old man. You remember that? He flinched. Dad, that was a joke. It wasn't funny. I slammed a folder onto the desk. You stole from me, humiliated me, and lied to everyone. So now it's time for you to learn something about humility. He looked up, alarmed. What do you mean? I pressed the intercom. Clara, would you send in Mr. David Hayes's file, please? Her voice crackled through. Of course, sir. Room 14, A is ready. David's eyes widened. Room 14A? Dad, that's one of the resident rooms. Correct, I said calmly. You'll be staying here for a while. Think of it as an extended retreat. We'll take your phone and wallet for safekeeping, and you'll join the others for meals and chores. You like to play games with people's lives? Let's see how you handle a little reality. He stood up abruptly. You can't do this. Actually, I can, I replied. You see, you signed over my legal rights when you filed those papers, which means, on record, I'm technically unfit to manage my own affairs, and you're my appointed guardian. So, if you admit what you did, you go to prison. If you don't, then I'm just a resident, and you can't question my management decisions. Either way, you stay here until I say otherwise. The blood drained from his face. You're bluffing. Try me. 2 orderlies appeared at the door, polite but firm. Clara followed, her expression unreadable. Mr. Hayes, she said to David, please come with us. We'll get you settled. He turned to me, disbelief twisting his features. Dad, please, this isn't right. No, son, I said quietly. What you did to me wasn't right. This is mercy. As the door closed behind him, Clara lingered. You sure about this? I nodded slowly, my gaze fixed on the window. Sometimes people don't learn by being punished. They learn by being put in the same chair they built for others. That night, as I walked the halls, I passed room 14A. Through the small glass window, I saw David sitting on the edge of his bed, head in his hands. No phone, no control, no audience to impress. For the first time in years, I saw my son. Not the manipulator, not the liar, just a man realizing what he'd become. But I wasn't done. Not yet. He needed to understand the one thing I'd learned too late. Love isn't owed, it's earned. And tomorrow morning, his lesson would truly begin. The next morning, the facility was quiet except for the faint hum of breakfast carts rolling down the hallway. I sat by the window in my office, watching the sunlight spill across the courtyard. It was peaceful, the kind of peace I hadn't felt since before David's betrayal. Clara knocked gently before stepping in. He's awake, she said softly. Hasn't eaten. Been sitting there for hours. I nodded. Bring him to me. A few minutes later, the door opened and David shuffled in. His confident stride was gone. His hair was a mess, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but in spirit. He sat across from me, staring at the floor. I didn't sleep, he murmured. This place, it's not what I thought it was. I thought it was just somewhere people went to wait out the end. I leaned back. You mean like where you left me? He winced. Yeah, I guess I deserved that. We sat in silence for a moment. The only sound was the ticking clock between us. Dad, he started, voice trembling. I messed up. I thought money was everything. I thought if I just had enough, I'd finally be something. You always made things look so easy. The business, the house, mom, everything. I wanted that, but I didn't want to wait for it. I sighed. So you took it, he nodded. Yeah, and I took you for granted too. His voice cracked. I didn't mean to throw you away. I just didn't want to face you. I couldn't stand the disappointment in your eyes. For the first time, I saw sincerity. No arrogance, no deflection, just guilt, raw and heavy. David, I said quietly, when your mother died, I swore I'd protect you, no matter what. I didn't raise you to be perfect, just honest, and you weren't honest. Not with me, not even with yourself. He wiped his face, his shoulders trembling. I know. I just, I don't know how to fix this. I leaned forward. You start by admitting the truth. You stole from me. You betrayed me. But you can still rebuild. You can still become the man your mother believed you could be. He looked up, eyes full of regret. Do you forgive me? I hesitated. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a process, one built on accountability. I don't hate you, I said finally, but I can't forgive what you haven't made right. He nodded slowly. Then I'll make it right. That afternoon I had him help the residents, cleaning tables, walking people to lunch, serving tea. At first he resisted, embarrassed, but over time something shifted. He began talking to the old men about their lives, laughing with them, even sitting with a woman who reminded him of his mother. Clara came to me later that evening. He's different, she said. Doesn't talk like he's above anyone anymore. I smiled faintly. Maybe he's remembering where he came from. 2 weeks passed. David stayed, not as punishment, but as part of his penance. One morning, he came to my office with a folder in hand. I sold the car, he said, and the watch. It's not much, but it's enough to pay back what I took. I looked at him, genuinely surprised. You didn't have to. I did, he interrupted. You gave me everything. It's time I gave something back. I stood and walked to the window, taking a deep breath. For the first time in years, I felt something shift between us. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of it. David, I said, turning to face him, when I built this home, I wanted it to be more than just a place to live. I wanted it to be a place to learn about love, humility, and second chances. He looked around, his eyes misting. Guess I needed all three. I smiled. Then maybe it's working. Before he left that day, we stood in the courtyard where we'd first met again. The air was warm, the roses in bloom. I'm sorry, Dad, he said, voice low. I know, I replied. Just don't make me regret giving you another chance. He nodded, then hugged me, really hugged me, for the first time in years. It wasn't long, but it was real. As he walked away, I watched him go, his shoulders no longer hunched from arrogance, but from the weight of responsibility, and for once I felt hope. People always say, time heals everything. I don't believe that. What heals is the truth, and the courage to face it. When I turned to head back inside, Clara was standing in the doorway. So, she said with a small smile, did the lesson stick? I chuckled softly. Let's just say the son finally learned who was running the home, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't just proud of the father I'd been, I was proud of the man my son was finally becoming.